You ever think moving to the suburbs is supposed to buy you peace and quiet, maybe a slice of sanity after years in the city? Yeah, me too. What nobody tells you is that sometimes you're just trading one kind of chaos for another. I came out here desperate for something most folks take for granted: reliable, high-speed internet. For me, working remote as a software engineer and streaming on the side, it wasn't a luxury. It was air. Every meeting, every upload, every dollar I earned depended on that fiber line humming like a dream. At first, it was perfect, until it wasn't. The drops started subtle, random buffering in the middle of a client call, video freezing at the worst possible moments, my lightning-fast connection suddenly dragging like someone poured syrup into the wires. Maybe, I told myself, just one of those hiccups. We all get them. But hiccups don't last weeks. I'm talking missed deadlines, lost income, and the kind of frustration that makes you want to take a sledgehammer to your router. You know what I mean? So, I do what anyone would. Call the ISP, spend an hour listening to the world's worst hold music, finally get a polite rep who tells me, "No issues on our end, sir. Maybe check your setup?" Right. So I did. New router, new cables, passwords changed, disconnected half the house, even unplugged my dog's smart feeder. No dice. Still glitched. Still losing money. At some point, I started thinking, maybe it wasn't the tech. Maybe it was someone. That's when the universe, with its perfect sense of timing, tossed Karen back into my life. Karen was our HOA president, the self-crowned queen of petty. Picture the kind of woman who measures your grass with a ruler and fines you for breathing too loud after 10 p.m. Once, she called me out for having a non-compliant mailbox. That kind of neighbor. Only now, she was acting weird. Cagier than usual. One night, walking my dog, I spotted her landscaper crouched by the utility box right outside my fence, the same box that fed my sacred internet. But he wasn't doing yard work. He was elbow deep in cables. I get it, could be nothing. But my gut? It was doing somersaults. So I did what any suspicious nerd would. Set up a small camera under the eaves, aimed right at the box. Nothing crazy, just enough to catch someone with sticky fingers. 3 days later, jackpot. Caught on camera, Karen, in broad daylight, dragging her techie nephew over and digging through the wires. Not just snooping, tampering, installing a splitter, running a separate line buried straight toward her house, 2 lots down. My blood pressure probably hit a new record. Karen, the same woman who'd bragged at the last HOA meeting about her premium internet speeds, had been siphoning off my line, slowing down my life so she could watch Netflix in 4K. And yeah, I could have marched over, started screaming, called the police, maybe even sued her. But honestly, that would have let her play the victim. Karen didn't need a fight. She needed a lesson. So I called Marcus, my old college roommate, now a cybersecurity engineer, the guy who treats hacking as a hobby. I showed him the footage, and he just grinned. "You want justice or humiliation?" he asked. "Why not both?" I said. What happened next? Well, let's just say Marcus lived for this. He set up my router to detect every device leeching off my network by MAC address, which is basically the device's fingerprint. Turns out Karen's whole house was freeloading. Smart fridge, both daughters' phones, her husband's Xbox, even their Ring doorbell. She'd built her smart home empire on my bandwidth. Marcus rerouted all her devices into a virtual guest network we created, one, with the speed throttled to a crawling 56 kbps. That's right, straight up 1990s dial-up. Couldn't stream, couldn't scroll, couldn't even load a page without hearing that ancient screeching tone in your head. It was beautiful. Next morning, I'm sipping coffee by the window when I hear yelling outside. Karen, in her bathrobe, stomping around her driveway, stabbing at her phone like it's personally offended her. By noon, her teenage daughter is in meltdown because TikTok won't load. Her husband's cussing about getting kicked off Xbox mid-game. Karen herself storms up to a poor ISP techvin down the street, flailing her arms and pointing at my house like I'd cursed her Wi-Fi. The tech checks the box, looks at her, and says, loud enough for me to hear, "Ma'am, your house isn't even connected to this line." I swear, her face went white as printer paper. She glared at me from across the yards. That's when I stepped out, big neighborly wave. "Everything okay over there?" Karen, she looked like she wanted to strangle me with an Ethernet cable. 2 days later, A note appeared on my front door. No postage, just taped on bold. Notice of noncompliance. Unauthorized tampering with community utilities may result in fines or legal action. Signed, of course, by Karen, Her Highness of HOA. She accused me of compromising community security and endangering resident connectivity. Yeah, that happened. But see, half the board liked me. I'd fixed their computers, helped their kids with homework during lockdown, shoveled driveways when nobody else would. So, at the emergency meeting Karen called, I brought my laptop and played the footage, her and her nephew, red-handed. The silence was delicious. Mr. Alvarez, one of the board, nearly choked on his tea. Mrs. Chen looked at Karen and said, "You try to frame him. That's a felony." Karen fumbled for excuses, claimed her nephew was just inspecting the box. But I had video, clear as day, of the splitter and her backyard cable. The board voted on the spot, suspended her from HOA presidency, pending investigation. She stormed out, faced the color of a stop sign. But I wasn't done. She still had her devices, still limping along at turtle speed on my guest network. So, Marcus and I had one last trick. We added a sound file to the network, every time someone in her house tried to stream anything big, they'd hear that old-school dial-up screech for 5 full seconds before the page loaded. Her kids thought the house was haunted. Her husband thought their TV was broken. Karen called every tech in town. No one could fix it. After that, I called the ISP myself and had them install a locked fiber box, tech access only. End of the line, literally. A couple days later, I got a note under my door in shaky handwriting. "I don't like you. You don't like me. But I admit I went too far. I've removed everything from your line. Can we move on?" Not exactly an apology, but I'll take it. I had Marcus permanently scrub her devices from my network, just for good measure. No more piggybacking. No more dial-up torture. In the end, I let it go, not because Karen deserved it, but because she'd already lost everything that mattered to her. The presidency, the respect of her neighbors, and the last ounce of digital power she had left. Funny how some people only learn when you hit them where it hurts, right in the Wi-Fi. So if you've ever had a neighbor like Karen, or just enjoyed watching someone get their comeuppance the old-fashioned way, hit that like button, drop your own wild neighbor stories in the comments, and stick around for more digital revenge tales. Because you never know, next time, we might just turn somebody's smart home into the dumbest house on the block that you'd think after all that, the busted scheme, the boardroom showdown, the forced confession, that Karen would have learned her lesson. But if there's one thing living in the suburbs teaches you, it's that some people just can't help themselves. And I wish I could tell you the story ended there, but honestly, things got even weirder. After that note slid under my door, a week of peace went by. No more lag, no more strange tech guys lurking near my box, not even a suspicious glance from across the yard. For a moment, I started to believe maybe, just maybe, things could be normal. Then, one night around 11, I caught a flicker of movement out my window. There was Karen, hood up, flashlight in hand, sneaking around the shared fence line, not toward my internet box this time, but toward the alley behind my house where the neighborhood security camera sits perched on a pole. Now, I could have just called the police, but at this point, it was almost entertaining to see how far she'd go. So I watched as she fiddled with the camera, probably thinking she could erase the digital record of her little crime spree. What she didn't realize was that my friend Marcus had upgraded the camera's cloud backup 2 days earlier. Every frame automatically saved off-site. No way for her to tamper with anything. Yeah, you'd think after being burned once she'd know better, but here we are. The next day, rumors started flying around the neighborhood group chat. Someone's car had been keyed, garden lights smashed, dog poop mysteriously appearing on the steps of anyone who sided with me at the HOA meeting. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just a pain. She was running a one-woman campaign of petty revenge. At first, I laughed it off. Let her get it out of her system, right? But then Mrs. Reynolds, the sweetest 80-year-old on the block, called me in tears because her front porch had been vandalized with paint. That was it. I wasn't letting Karen turn the neighborhood into her own little kingdom of spite. Marcus came over that night, and together we checked the security footage, not just from my camera, but from a couple neighbors who'd quietly asked for help after the last fiasco. Sure enough, there she was, Karen, caught red-handed, hoodie and all, parading around the neighborhood like some Villain in a low-budget movie. This time, though, it wasn't just my word against hers. I emailed the evidence to the rest of the board, making sure to blur out anyone else who might have been caught on camera just going about their day. Within 24 hours, Karen's antics were out in the open. The board called an emergency meeting, but this time it was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up, some angry, some curious, all tired of living under the reign of HOA Queen Karen. You should have seen her when they played the footage. Her face went through the whole rainbow, from ghost white to fire engine red. She tried to claim she was patrolling for security, but nobody bought it. Even her old allies on the board kept their heads down. In the end, they didn't just strip her of the presidency for good. They voted to ban her from any leadership role, ever, and fined her enough to make a dent in those designer handbags she loves so much. The crazy part? After all the drama, the gossip, the group chat memes that still haven't died down, Karen's house went dark. No porch lights, no car in the driveway, not even the glowing rectangles of her infamous smart home. For weeks, the only sign of life was the delivery guy dropping off takeout at the curb, never the front door. I'd like to say I felt bad, but after what she put this neighborhood through, I slept better than I had in months. But you know, it's funny how the story never really ends. A couple months later, there was a for sale sign out front. The rumor mill says she's moving to another suburb, maybe some poor town where nobody's caught up with her brand of crazy yet. The new folks who bought the place, young couple, seemed nice, and the first thing they did was ask me for help setting up their Wi-Fi. I laughed and said, sure, but fair warning, I take bandwidth theft very personally. So if you ever wonder whether standing up to a bully makes a difference, remember, Karen, sometimes all it takes is a little tech savvy, a good friend, and a neighborhood that finally decides enough is enough. If you've got your own wild HOA war stories or petty neighbor tales, don't hold back. Drop them in the comments. Let's see who really has the craziest neighbor on the planet. And if you stuck with me this far, hit like and subscribe, because you better believe I've got a few more digital battles up my sleeve. And hey, next time you lose your Wi-Fi at 3 in the morning, check the fence line. Never know who's out there, flashlight in hand, looking for a shortcut.